Mike Flanagan was a quiet, calculated ace for the Orioles during their heyday, but his sense of humor and affection for his teammates would shine through in the form of his famous nicknames for players published by Peter Gammons in the Boston Globe. He referred to the quirky Don Stanhouse as Full Pack because he would cause manager Earl Weaver to rip through a whole pack of cigarettes while he was on the mound. He dubbed Sixto Lezcano as Mordecai Sixto Lezcano as a play on Mordecai Three-Finger Brown. The nicknames even became self-aware when he referred to himself as Cy Young, which would naturally make Jim Palmer Cy Old. Steve Stone was Cy Present, and Scott McGregor was Cy Future. When Storm Davis was added to the fold, with a delivery resembling Palmer's, he would of course gain the moniker Cy Clone. After his playing days were over, Flanagan would give back to Baltimore in nearly every role imaginable before his tragic death in 2011. Today we pay tribute to a decorated, yet somehow still underrated, true workhorse, Mike Flanagan. Before we get rolling, if you would, please like and subscribe. For a small ball creator like me, the algorithm is everything, and a simple like goes a long way. Here we go. Mike Flanagan was born in Manchester, New Hampshire in 1951. His family's New England baseball roots ran deep. His grandfather, Ed Flanagan Sr., pitched for the Boston Braves. His claim to fame was pitching both games of barnstorm doubleheaders. He'd pitched the first game right-handed and the second game left-handed. So we don't have to look too far to figure out who Mike inherited his rubber arm from. Mike's father, Ed Jr., pitched in the Boston Red Sox farm system from 1947 to 1951. Mike's cousin, Bill Manning, who by family tradition had played minor league baseball, was also highly involved with Mike during his formative years, throwing batting practice for Mike every Sunday. In 1971, Mike's senior year of high school, he was selected by the Houston Astros in the 15th round of the MLB draft, but would not sign due to an elbow injury. He would instead sign on to play baseball for the UMass Minutemen. He also played on the freshman basketball team at UMass, and was notably a teammate of Rick Pitino's. Julius Erving was also a part of this program. In fact, Flanagan credits Dr. J for making him realize baseball was his calling, saying, quote, "One time I came down on a fast break and pulled up for a jump shot. Dr. J was nowhere in the area, but out of nowhere, he blocked the shot and 9 players were running the other way. First thing I thought, I better work on my slider because this is a whole different level of play." His sophomore year, he rode his revised slider to 9 wins, 89 strikeouts, and a 1.72 ERA, which led his team and conference. In the summer of '73, while he was pitching in the Cape Cod League, Flanagan was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles in the 7th round. The Orioles had selected franchise first baseman Eddie Murray 4 rounds prior. That's 100 wins above replacement in one draft. Mike settled into the minor leagues easily. His career minors ERA was 2.21, which is up there with the best in franchise history. Flanagan made his big league debut on September 5, 1975, appearing in relief in a home game against the Yankees. He'd get his first start in the last game of that season, September 28th, also against the Yankees. This one was a heartbreaker. Mike pitched 8 scoreless innings before loading the bases in the bottom of the 9th. He was pulled for reliever Dyer Miller, who was unable to stop the bleeding. The Orioles would lose 3-2, and Flanagan would get pinned with the loss. He started the 1976 season with the Orioles, but he struggled, going 0-3 before being sent down to AAA Rochester to regroup. On September 1st of 1976, a calendar year after his debut, Flanagan showed perseverance and got his first major league win in a 6-hit complete game against the Royals. He would hit his stride in 1977, posting a 15-10 record in 33 starts. He came within 1 strikeout of the franchise record, striking out 13 Detroit Tigers in his last start of the season. Mike's momentum carried into the '78 season. He had a 12-5 record going into the All-Star break and was named to the American League All-Star team. He didn't get a chance to pitch in the game, but a night off was probably wise. He started 40 games that season, which was second behind Phil Niekro, who by my estimation threw 25,000 knuckleballs that season. Flanagan was fifth in the majors in innings pitched with 281. 1979 saw Mike Flanagan win a major league leading 23 games. 5 of these were shutouts. He won the AL Cy Young Award in a landslide. He was humble in his acceptance of the award, saying, quote, "I may have been the best pitcher, but I'm also on the best team." Facing off against the National League's best team, the Pirates, Flanagan got the complete game win in Game 1, but lost in Game 5. He was one of 5 carousel relievers Earl Weaver deployed in the 9th inning of Game 7, where the family would outlast the Birds. In the early 80s, the workhorse would show his first signs of fatigue, being sidelined with several flare-ups of tendinitis in his left arm. Flanagan would make the national news when William Keogh, one of the American hostages in Iran, whose mail had largely gone unsent, finally made contact, but not with his family. His letter to his favorite baseball player, Mike Flanagan, where he requested an autograph, made it to its destination. Never, ever underestimate a hardcore baseball fan. Flanagan made national news again when his daughter Carrie was born happy and healthy in 1982. She was one of the first successful cases of in vitro fertilization in America. The Greater Baltimore Medical Center claimed she was the first in vitro baby to not require a C-section. In 1983, Flanagan would block out the media noise and help power the Orioles to the 1983 World Series title. The World Series hangover seemed to linger in Baltimore until Mike's contract was up in 1987. He was acquired by the Toronto Blue Jays after the release of the aforementioned Phil Niekro. He would return to Baltimore in 1991, where he'd take on bullpen duties. He relieved Bob Malacky, who was injured by a line drive in the 6th inning of an eventual combined no-hitter against the Athletics that season. In poetic fashion, Mike Flanagan's final pitches would be the last ever thrown at Memorial Stadium, sealing the deal in the 9th inning of the final 1992 home game and ushering in what may be the most touching moment in Baltimore sports history, where past Orioles would take the field one last time. Flanagan stayed close to the Orioles organization in a number of different roles. He served as the pitching coach in 1995 with a second stint from 1998 to 2002. He would join former teammates John Lowenstein, Jim Palmer, and Rick Dempsey in the booth as an analyst on Orioles broadcasts, off and on throughout the years as well. He worked in the Orioles front office for over 6 years, rising as high as Executive Vice President of Baseball Operations. You don't win 141 career Major League Baseball games without being a perfectionist. Many close to Flanagan feared he was shouldering far too much of the blame for the organization's woes during that era. However, the Orioles' dysfunction under owner Peter Angelos was well documented long before Flanagan was at the helm. Today we're witnessing that this dysfunction is in fact generational, as Angelos' 2 sons are actively smearing each other's names in the press and childishly fighting over the family business. Orioles fans loved and trusted Flanny. It seems he felt it was his duty to protect the fans from the small market nightmare the team had become. On August 24, 2011, the saddest day in the memory of most Orioles fans, Mike Flanagan died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound near his home. His family, the team, and his former broadcast partners were stunned beyond words. His wife Alex verified that depression had haunted him since his playing days, saying, quote, "Did you ever notice Mike coming off the mound after a good inning? He always had his head down." She said he would often talk about shadows, and though he had seen a therapist on and off, she was unsure if the therapist had ever pinpointed the source of these shadows in his life. Mike Flanagan was an extremely intelligent and talented person who excelled at almost everything he put effort toward. He had a ton of effort in a ton of different places. He led by example, and his post-baseball actions on behalf of the Orioles were a silent soliloquy of his appreciation to the organization, whether or not he felt it was appropriate to peel back the fourth wall. I find this relatable because behind my own fourth wall, I'm an Orioles fan in West Virginia. It can be overwhelming to look at the statistics and rank 50th out of 50 states in the wealth and general well-being of our citizens. Many homegrown politicians claim to have the answers, but there's not an answer to poverty when our vast resources were sold out from under us long before most of us were born. No one person can successfully renovate a crumbling infrastructure of that size, unfortunately. I digress. We, as Orioles fans in 2022, now have what Mike Flanagan thought he'd be able to provide us with a few years ago. A young and exciting baseball team with a farm system stacked for the future. We have hope. Who's to say Flanagan isn't the architect of some of that hope? He may not be the most beloved Oriole of all time, but no Oriole seems to have had a direct part in so many of the defining moments in team history quite like Mike Flanagan. A lot's changed since 1983, but if that trophy ever gets hoisted in Birdland by the Bay again, we won't forget to dedicate it to number 46. If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please get help. Never be too proud to ask for help. Take it easy.